Here's your homework read aloud for this week. First Contact with Europeans by Stephen Curry, written in 2003. In this informational text, Stephen Curry discusses European explorers' first contact with the American Indians who lived where Florida is today. During this time period, Europeans were just beginning to build settlements on land where American Indians already lived. As you read, take notes on the interactions, that means how they were friends or enemies, between European explorers and American Indians. That word explorers is kind of funky. I wonder if that's a person who explores, since I know ER means a person when it's at the end of a word usually. In 1513, Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de Leon had an expedition. That word has a one by it. Expedition, a journey. Led a journey northwest from Puerto Rico. Ooh, some of you might have a connection right here. He and his men were looking for a land known as Bimini. According to rumor, Bimini was full of gold. It also was said to be home to the magical Fountain of Youth, a spring whose waters kept people forever young. I have a question. Why did people believe in this fountain? Ponce de Leon never located Bimini. At least he found neither gold nor the Fountain of Youth. He did, however, become the first European to see Florida. Ooh, I have a connection right there. I've visited Florida. Some of you might have a connection because you've taken a journey or you're from Puerto Rico. As the explorers sailed north along Florida's southwestern shoreline, they saw some Calusa Indians beckoning them to come ashore. Ooh, beckoning. That's a weird word. Maybe it means, it looks like they're in the picture trying to get them to come to shore, so maybe calling them to come ashore. Curious, the Spanish crew dropped anchor and sent several men in small boats to the beach. The first encounter, the first meeting, maybe? That would make sense. The first meeting between Europeans and Indians of the Southeast was far from peaceful. Intrigued, that has a little 2 by it, so I go down here to 2, to cause interest. So they were interested by the supplies the visitors carried. The Calusa immediately began carting away tools, oars, and equipment. When the outnumbered Europeans objected, a Calusa struck and wounded a Spaniard. A person from Spain. So one of the Indians hurt someone from Spain. A brief battle followed, during which 2 more sailors were injured. The men barely managed to escape back to the safety of the ship. Ponce de Leon resolved to return. What word could go there? Maybe promised? Ponce de Leon promised to return. That makes sense. In 1521, he made a second voyage to Florida. This time, he built a small colony on the shores of the west coast of Florida, the Gulf of Mexico. The Calusa there, however, were even less welcoming than the ones Ponce de Leon had met in 1513. Within a few months, the Indians attacked the colony, killed many of the Spanish, including Ponce de Leon, and drove away the rest. So make sure you have 2 questions or 2 connections on that page. On to page 2. Still, the Spanish persist to continue to do something, so they kept coming to Florida. In 1539, Hernando de Soto traveled through much of the southeast, becoming the first European to visit the Indian peoples of Alabama, Georgia, and Mississippi. Unlike the Calusas, however, many of these tribes welcomed the explorers. One Creek ruler, for instance, spoke gracious words of friendship and courtesy while giving De Soto a beautiful string of pearls. Gracious and courtesy. I'm not quite sure what those words mean, but I'm going to put a plus by them because they sound very positive, because I see words like beautiful and gift And this is an example of how they welcomed people. So these sound like good words. Unfortunately, De Soto did not respond in the same manner. Backed by a well-armed troops numbering 600, he forced the tribes to provide his men with food and shelter. De Soto also enslaved many Indians. Oh, so he made them slaves. So that's a connection, because I read about slaves in a book called My Dear's Aprons. Now, if you haven't read that book, then you probably shouldn't put that as your connection, but maybe you have a different book that you've read that talked about slaves. Like Spain, England and France also sent expeditions. Oh, we decided that meant journeys. They sent trips to the southeast. The three countries soon began to build towns, forts, and trading posts on American Indian land. In 1564, the French built Fort Caroline near present-day Jacksonville, Florida. The Spanish settled St. Augustine, Florida 1 year later, and in 1607, the English established a permanent settlement at Jamestown, Virginia. Little by little, the Europeans were gaining a foothold in the southeast. A foothold. A position that allows for further advancement. So they kind of got a starting place. Even when European settlement began, some American Indians were welcoming to the foreigners. Foreigners. Ooh, I don't quite know what that means. That looks funny, but I do see the word foreign in there, so I'm betting it's people who come from a different place. Trade was one important reason for this acceptance. The Europeans brought with them metal tools, firearms, and many other objects unknown in North America. Southeastern Indians were eager to trade their own resources for these new valuables. Other tribes accepted the Europeans for political reasons. Powhatan, the leader of Virginia's Indians, for instance, probably could have destroyed Jamestown as soon as it was built, but decided against it. He hoped instead to make a military alliance. An alliance. An agreement, a partnership. So he wants to be partners with the newcomers and eventually defeat his own local enemies. There were Indian tribes who were deeply suspicious. That has a 7. They were suspicious. They were distrust. So they don't feel like they can trust. That was one of our vocab words. So they don't feel like they can trust. There were Indian tribes who were deeply suspicious of the Europeans, however, and as time went on, more and more southeastern Indians came to see the negative side of contact with Europeans. The English, French, and Spanish were not interested in sharing the land in North America with the American Indians who had been living there. Rather, the Europeans wanted to expand their empires, control the area's resources, and drive the native peoples away. And the Europeans' advanced weaponry gave them an enormous edge in fulfilling these desires. Even the American Indians' greater numbers could not make up for the Europeans' firepower. Firepower. I wonder if that's talking about guns. Firepower. European contact brought other problems too. New and unfamiliar diseases were spread among the Indian population. Because they had never been exposed to these illnesses and had no built-in ability to be unaffected by an infection or toxin. So they didn't have any way of protecting themselves against diseases. The diseases swept through the tribes. In some parts of the Southeast, 9 out of 10 American Indians died of diseases, ranging from measles to chickenpox. Some of you might have a connection if you've gotten a chickenpox shot or if you had the chickenpox. By 1754, it was too late to stop the European advance. The first contact between the Calusa Indians and Ponce de Leon, 2.5 centuries before, had ended with the Spanish being pushed out to sea, but the balance of power had changed. The destruction of the traditional southeastern American Indian culture was well underway. So I'm going to write a question here. Why did the Spanish destroy Indian ways of living? You might have a connection about something that you've read. We have read several stories about people who came from Europe as immigrants, so that might be one of your connections. Let's look at these questions. Please make sure that you mark out the ones that you know are wrong, and then go back and choose your answer. Part A. What is the central idea of the text? Central idea. Thing the story is all about. A. American Indians avoided Europeans when they first arrived. B. Europeans were willing to share the land with American Indians. C. American Indians and Europeans both benefited equally from their alliance. D. Europeans clashed with American Indians when they arrived in North America. Part B. Which detail from the text best supports the answer to Part A? A. As the explorers sailed north along Florida's southwestern shoreline, they saw some Calusa Indians beckoning them to come ashore. B. Backed by well-armed troops numbering 600, he forced the tribes to provide his men with food and shelter. C. Like Spain, England and France also sent expeditions to the southeast. The three countries soon began to build towns, forts, and trading posts on Indian land. D. Even when European settlement began, some American Indians were welcoming to the foreigners. Trade was one important reason for this acceptance. 3. How does the discussion of Europeans' first meeting with the Calusa Indians contribute, that means help, the development of ideas in the text? So how does it help you understand the ideas? A. It highlights how welcoming American Indians were of the Europeans. B. It highlights the conflict between the Europeans and American Indians. C. It highlights the Europeans and American Indians' desire to form an alliance, to be partners. D. It highlights how Europeans and American Indians needed each other to survive. 4. What is the meaning of resolved as it is used in paragraph 4? So your first job is to go to paragraph 4, reread it, and see where the word resolved is. See if it's a positive or negative word, then see which ones you can cross out. A. Decided. B. Doubted. That sounds like a negative word. C. Feared. That's a negative word. Refused. That sounds like a negative word. So see if your resolve seems like a positive or a negative word. 5. Which of the following describes the author's likely purpose in paragraph 5? A. To highlight how much new land the Europeans were able to discover in North America. B. To suggest that the Europeans didn't realize the American Indians were offering them friendship. C. To show that the Europeans responded violently to American Indians even when offered friendship. D. To show that Europeans and American Indians were able to share the land in America successfully. So make sure that you look at paragraph 5 and decide what it's telling you. 6. What is the meaning of gracious in paragraph 5? Go to paragraph 5, read gracious, see if it seems like a positive or a negative word. A. Cruel. That seems like a negative word. Kind. That seems like a good word. Misleading. Miss means not, so not leading. That seems like a negative word. Surprising. That could kind of be either. So check out gracious in paragraph 5. See which one fits best. 7. Which of the following describes how the author organizes information in the text? A. He describes how Europeans' relationships with American Indians improved over time. B. He describes how the power shifted from American Indians to the Europeans over time. C. He compares Europeans' exploration of America with their exploration of other countries. D. He compares Europeans' relationships with American Indians with their relationship with other native peoples. 8. How did the arrival of Europeans affect American Indians' way of life? Use evidence from the text to support your answer. So start by turning your question. Cross out our question word. Circle our answer word. So the arrival of Europeans affect American Indians' way of life. That seems to be what it's asking about. And did is our verb. So the arrival of Europeans, so white people coming to America, affected American Indians by blank. And then make sure you have evidence. So that's I know this because on page blank, paragraph blank, the text says, don't forget your quotation marks. Remember, they're like boyfriend, girlfriend. They have to go together. And then we need explanation. So this means, and then you tell your reason. This means reason because, and then you tell your evidence. Okay?